you want to have like a larger conversation about
argument, not a precedent-based argument. Can you do that for me?
You want to have a broader conversation about like prayer and its usefulness and Christianity versus.
It's always a broader conversation. I'm being very specific.
Okay. You don't like to answer, right? So the people who make arguments in court don't consider evolution to be religious expression. They don't. Now, you don't have to like that answer. That's just the answer, and you can think that that's like bullshit. But if I were to say something like math is religious expression, you would probably be like, maybe it is, but I don't know.
I already agree with that greater point. And I concede that ground that the people in power who have the power over the institution of public schools.
It's a boring conversation. I mean,
probably do think this way. However, we're still talking about the concept of power. All of this is based around the concept of power.
You want to talk about that.
I'm asking you to give me a logical explanation.
You've hijacked the panel, which is about the Supreme
you're
Court.
trying to hijack it by saying it's only legalistic. It's not. It's logical, it's spiritual, and it's the way that human beings operate. It's not simply legalistic.
Supreme Court. How the fuck can it not be
Supreme Court
legal?
Panel, and you've hijacked it to have your own little diatribe about how evolution.
Can I disagree?
Somebody should just appeal to the moderator and ask for the topic.
Disagree with the Supreme Court in a non-legalistic way.
You can disagree with the Supreme Court all you want, but the terms on which you're doing so aren't
and
legal.
When people
when
people get put into power, sir, when people get put into power via my elected officials, they nominate the Supreme Court justices that are going to enforce my agenda. Do they not?
I'm glad you're conceding the law and saying this is just power politics. That's our point this whole time.
No, you're making legalistic arguments. That's separate from power. You can have power with no law.
I'm glad you're conceding the law and you're saying it's just about power. That's what we've been saying this whole time. That's what me, Kevin Logan, and we've been saying it's all results oriented. It's all power.
BPF,
it's not based on reason.
You don't have a leg to stand on here, because if it's all about power, the fact that those in power right now don't consider evolution to be religious thought is the end of the discussion. Because if it's just about power, they've made the decision.
It would be a great way for me to begin to justify why it is that we want the power to swing in our direction. So
you want reasons? You want to talk about reasons? I thought you want to talk about power. If you want to talk about reasons, we can talk about reasons.
How many of you fuckers do you want me to respond to at one time? Give me a chance with this asshole, and then I'll get right back to you.
Okay.
So one more time. Let me ask you something. When we're talking about the exercise of power, isn't it appropriate for me, if I want more of it, to justify those reasons to sway as many people to my cause, since we have a democratic system, like I'm trying to do right now? So you can't just say, well, it's the end of the discussion because we're in power, where you're not all.
How about we just go back to the Rawls veil of ignorance again? It's pretty simple. You don't know where you're going to be in a society, so you create a society that is fair to everybody as possible, so that no matter where you end up in it, you still have a good shot at being happy.
Always going to be in fucking power, are you?
Well, yeah. Do you not see how that works for you? Because you were going, well, they're enforcing my law now. How about we have a system called, I don't know, law, whereby it protects people from, say, evil cunts like you, who want to impose their shit on everybody else?
Who makes the law? People in power, yeah.
And I
agree with Kevin.
One second. Okay. I'm gonna choose an order. So I want to go Jeb, and then I want to go to More Perfect Union, because they've been waiting.
Oh, shit.
I agree with Kevin Logan. We should have a system called law that protects us from people forcing shit on other people, which is why I think it was really great that our Supreme Court did not allow the school to force this man to not be allowed to express his.
That is the exact opposite of how that is supposed to work.
Religion. And in the same way that, he got his private space he could have gone to, his prayer is allowed space, I would say that is wrong for the same reason why Rosa Parks being able to sit on the back of the bus wasn't good enough.
Are you a clown? Are you a fucking clown?
No, hey,
let him finish.
My turn,
please.
My turn.
Equal, right? He's been waiting.
So, I don't agree that creating a separate but equal space for him to pray is appropriate. I don't think that prayer in public is considered public prayer because it's not.
I thought your well-regulated militia stick was bad, but this is fucking rank.
Can I speak? If it's rank, then you'd let me keep going because it would just help you out, but you can't. So anyway, if a teacher goes into the
cafeteria, he's pretty upset.
If a teacher goes into the cafeteria,
go on, suck his dick harder, BPF.
Please, please. Okay, wait. I'm fine with you guys sparring, but if it gets to a point where you're sparring over other people talking, I'm gonna shut it down. Okay?
I just want BPF. I just want BPF to wank him up harder. Go on, jerk it hard. Go on.
Kevin. I just said that it's annoying me, and you proceeded to then annoy me more.
You should probably do more arm exercises, Kevin.
Andrew, now
Just
you're
to be
annoying
honest
me.
with you.
Please. I want
Show
Jeff
us
to
your
be able to
forearms.
talk.
Let me
I
get
want
my
other people to talk.
based. Let me get my based ass point out. A teacher that eats their lunch in the cafeteria has the same right that a teacher that eats their lunch in their classroom to pray during that lunch, despite the fact that there are students there that may see it or even may take.
I would actually argue against this fairly simply. A teacher that is in the cafeteria when other students are there probably has the implicit understanding that they are there to help observe and protect the students and to answer any of their questions and to be a beacon for them. It is what we pay teachers to do. We pay teachers to partially babysit and partially educate. Eating lunch with a group of students would be babysitting. Therefore, it's under their prerogative as their job, not covered by freedom of speech for prayer in that moment, because they have the implicit coercive bias of having that authority over the students. If they are in a position where they are equal to a student, so basically off school grounds, then they would have the ability to pray without that implicit coercion, legally speaking. There's obviously an argument to be made that there is implicit coercion being used off school grounds, especially with younger kids who look up to their teachers more than teenagers do.
Take the charge to take part in it. Now, Franklin said something that I disagree with. He said it was established during the case that there was some level of coercion that seemed to manifest among the students, based on testimony that said they might have felt pressure to do it. I would argue that the ruling of the case shows that they actually established the opposite. They established that though there were some students that may have perceived things as coercive, what they determined was that there was no actual evidence of coercion. There was no manifestation of the kids who prayed being treated better than the kids who did not. And as we said, by the end of this, he was praying alone in the middle of the field. And you said it was also established that he was doing that as a representative of the school. But again, the decision in the case established that they believed he was not acting as a representative of the school.
We're disagreeing with it.
No, you're
That's
not.
what we're here to talk about.
Pisco, he didn't say he's disagreeing with it. He said it was established in the case
I
that
said
that is what
established in the
happened.
record.
Established in the record. Also, pretty sure he disagrees with it.
It's the facts. Come on.
Yes, and it wasn't established because
You can't argue the
For
facts
him,
and then
not
say you
him.
disagree
he was
with the
no
opinion.
longer acting as a coach of a football team when he alone went into the middle of the field
disagrees.
and prayed. Yes,
That's the issue
what
in
I'm
the case. We're disagreeing.
Yes, but what I'm saying is he was not coaching a football team when he went to go pray. He was not calling plays. He was not bringing kids into the huddle. He was not assigning positions. He was not giving any orders. He was going into the middle of the field and he was praying. And just because he had the option to pray somewhere more private and he still chose to pray in public does not strip him of his right, just like nobody else outwardly protesting and outwardly expressing their civil rights in a public square because they feel that they have the right to have them strips them of those rights.
Different.
I
Totally
mean, you
different.
can
It's
still,
not
you
totally
can still
different.
have you can still have the right to pray without having to
Oh my god, the kitty is back, everyone. Attention, Ginger's kitty is back.
necessarily make it a public thing. Like you
But
can
we
say
still,
it in your
but we don't
but
have the rights.
Yeah, you
only
can
in
have the right
private.
to be
We have the right in
making
public.
it a public thing too. But when are the liberals going to do that for us ever?
Yeah,
Right?
private.
And as a
private
Christian, surely you believe
You know what I
you
mean?
agree with.
One has to
Wait.
do with the other, actually.
I said I want
Well,
to.
they're analogous. See, that's any analogy you make. Nothing's going to directly have anything to do with the other thing, but
It's your
it can
point,
still be
Dylan.
analogous. That's how that works. So I'm saying
It's
to you,
an
is
analogy.
you can't say you can't say this shit like, well, because it's public, it's wrong. It's like, okay, but if you were to take a poll on like public affection or things like this,
And it's not determined as public based on how
Okay.
many people see it. Public in the legal sense means
Fuck
state
no.
recognized. Private speech doesn't mean private like you not letting anybody see you. Private speech means your private speech that you have the right to as an individual. It does not mean you have to keep other
Yeah,
people from seeing
that's
it. Ever.
worse
Okay,
for
so-
that's worse for Kennedy.
Perfect union.
Yeah. So,
he was interrupting, so we can interrupt him, right? I just wanted to make sure I was clear on the rules of the panel. That's all. He was
Well,
making
the reason why was
or
because I
something.
said he was going to be next, and then you went.
Oh, okay, got it.
Well, that's because I can do the same thing that he can. I can shift my voice.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, by the way. Sorry about that.
It's not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, look, check it out.
I am sorry about interrupting.
Why don't you shut the fuck up?
Okay,
In any case, the argument, right, that and I'm glad that Jeptan, that you brought it up, the separate but equal thing, right? They offered him a private place out of the way. That's separate. That's separate but equal, right? That's been struck down a long time ago. Just a couple quick points, right? The ruling was struck down on a number of issues. A couple of them were that Kennedy's prayers, they were considered to be private. You guys brought that up already. And that they're not, Jeptan, you also said this, they were not pursuant to his official duties. Okay. The other part is that the justification that Bremerton School District had for firing him was that they were using, they used an establishment clause justification that was relying on, I guess, a case, Lemon v. Kurtzman, which was actually overturned before. Okay. So it was that decision.
Yeah, the overturning of Lemon v. Kurtzman was actually something extremely bad that happened. And again, that happened recently within the last 4 or 5 years. Horrible fucking decision. The Lemon test was actually super, super useful for making sure that you didn't have religion in public office.
Was faulty. And that's the other primary reason why they dropped it down. Now, those things kind of helps people understand the balancing test was the thing in Kurtzman. But I got a question for you, because if you think that because you're in the middle of a game or at the end of the game, Peace go for you, and then Gender, a quick question for you. Do you think Tim Tebow, who was a student at Florida University that got federal dollars, do you think he should have been banned from playing because he exercised his freedom of religion by praying in the end zone? And then Gender, you said that you're presupposing a different outcome based on a religious choice. I think when I did my opening, I said it doesn't matter if the person were a Muslim or Jew or Hindu or whatever.
Matters.
If they were exercising a First Amendment right to express themselves in a private prayer, I said in my opening that was not going to be a problem.
Salute.
And then
Nazi salute.
Nazi
salute.
One second.
Godwin's law.
Hang on. Stop, please. Okay, so my question to you is, how can you say that you think you disagree with the ruling because you think if the choice of religious expression were different, that there would have been a different outcome? You have no facts to support your evidence, but you sort of launch a defense of your side of the argument by basically saying, if only it were a different religion, the result would have been different. And I don't think you have any evidence to support that.
Was that to me?
Yeah, the last part was to you.
Oh, well, I did agree with their assessment, though.
Yeah, I realize, but I think you said that if it had been a Muslim prayer, or if it had been a different religion, you think the outcome would have been different.
I did say, in my personal opinion, I feel like that it would have been a different outcome. I don't feel like they would have given the same
deference on the facts.
But just
parties litigating it.
But just to be fair, But just to be fair, you don't have any evidence to back that assertion, right? That's just a feeling.
You just said it's your intuition.
Yeah, I said it's my opinion. That means that it's not. It's probably.
To answer your question, and no, of course not. The actions of students who are the ones who are, on the sort of end of the conveyor belt of this education, it's never been upheld by this court to be an establishment clause violation for students to engage in prayer.
Again, because there's no. So the level of coercion that a single student has, legally speaking, is like uniform throughout the school, right? Like legally, in the eyes of the law, every student has the same level of influence as any other student. We know that socially and interpersonal dynamically, that is incorrect, because, like, obviously it fucking is. The rich kids are going to be the popular ones 9 times out of 10, because they are able to, they've got the fucking social education and the wealth and blah, 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 blah. And we're just talking about classic intersectional analysis at that point.
Students are like allowed to pray to address the merits of the legal argument, which I'm glad we're getting at. You just saying that because a person is not actively giving coaching means that they're not in pursuit of their public duties is totally contravenes the court's prior holdings. I'm assuming that at least not Andrew, but at least the other conservatives, you agree with the precedent that says teachers praying to kids actively, that would be a violation of the Establishment Clause, correct?
If it's done in the course of the curriculum, sure.
It depends on the.
I think unless it's optional, so such as like my school, and I'm sure other schools have this, to where a bunch of Christian athletes go out to a flagpole, and there'll be a couple teachers that are in charge of that kind of like club, and so they'll pray along the flagpole.
That's the students doing something. You're talking about a club that the students form and just found a teacher to supervise them. That is, again, different than teacher-led.
As well as the teachers. I think
a teacher in the classroom. A teacher in the classroom. Welcome to class, kids.
No, not in the classroom.
During classroom instruction? Yeah, no, of course not.
Okay, so you think, because that's the basis of like this don't say gay, quote unquote, don't say gay law in Florida, is that if it's within your duties, you're allowed to make content-based restrictions on class, right? Just like you can say, it's not a violation. I'm hoping you guys don't think it's a violation of the First Amendment to say you can't teach gender theory in class, right? And so I'm assuming you're okay with content-based restrictions in the classroom if they're in pursuit of their duties. The question is like,
teachers.
Yeah, but if class is concluded and that teacher is praying and students decide to stay in with her to pray, that would be okay.
You think that would be okay? So you think that our precedent supports the notion that
if
teachers can stay in...
I don't care if precedent supports it. You asked me if I agree with precedent.
Okay.
I would agree with precedent that says during classroom instruction, you can't make kids pray during time where they have to be present with you and be listening to you actively. But if class is concluded, school is concluded, and you say, and they know, hey, this teacher, she actually goes to my church. I know she prays at the end of the day. I want to stick around and pray with her. If the teacher got fired for that, I'd be just as up in arms.
Yeah. On company time, in pump.
It's not on company time. Class is concluded.
Oh, yeah, it is. Oh, yeah, no, but you're still being paid. The coach is still being paid.
I mean, no, they're not hourly. They're not hourly employees.
So they were. The parties conceded that they were on company time.
Yeah, the coach conceded. The coach conceded that he was on company. The coach conceded that he was quote unquote on duty. Yeah, and so when it come to that, what I'm gonna say is that I don't know if this is court precedent or this could just be state law. So forgive me if this is just state law. But at least in Indiana, students are able to bring up like religious concerns with the teachers, but the teachers are not able to bring it up with the student. So if I were to ask a teacher about like Christian theology or Muslim theology, the teacher can then feel free to engage with me in that conversation. But the teacher cannot bring it up to me. And so I think that rule can kind of be followed here, is that the teacher can't bring it up to the student, but should the student come up and say, "Hey, I want to pray with you," I think that's perfectly fine.
So now let's bring it forward a little bit. Even assuming that I agree with you, I don't agree with you. This is private speech. I think it's obviously that the coach is having an instructional role here. He has duties to make sure all the kids leave. I totally disagree with you on the notion of government speech versus private speech. But even if I agree with you that it's private speech, assume that's private speech. I'm going to invoke this example. Suppose that we have a teacher who's teaching Islamism to kids in the same period you just told me. That's private speech between the kids in the school. The teacher's teaching Islamism to these kids on their private time. Are the schools allowed to punish that teacher? Yes or no?
Yeah, instructing is different than expressing. Me praying is not instructing is different than expressing.
Okay, he's praying. He's praying to in doing a prayer that's explicitly militant Islam.
I'm gonna stick to what I said.
Totally fine.
If the student brought it up to a teacher, then I don't see an issue with it. If the teacher brought it up to the student, then I see an issue with it.
No, it's private speech, right? So we already conceded that interaction was private speech for you guys. And so the teacher in this private speech moment comes up to the kid and says, "Hey, don't you want to join in this Wahhabi?"
Coercive. That would be seen as coercive. He said, "Don't you want to join in?"
Not based on this court.
Hold on. No, because
that's not true.
There's a mistake. The court did recognize that just because you are in a certain setting doesn't necessarily make something private speech, that the nature of the speech also takes part in it being private speech.
The content of the speech makes it. So the content of the speech makes. So
yes. So prayer is different than instruction. If you unfurl your prayer mat as a Muslim teacher and you pray after school and one of your Muslim students unfurls their mat next to you and prays along with you, because that is the time that you are both supposed to pray, that is fine. 100%.
This is not just freedom of religion. The court, as MPU said rightly, this is also a free speech case. So I am going to give you the Nazi salute example. So you're in the halftime, same facts, but instead of bowing your pray, you give the Nazi salute. You can't be sanctioned, right?
I mean, I agree with the right to religion part of this case. I don't necessarily agree that you can.
Well, then you're logically inconsistent, Jebton.
No, not always. No,
no, you are.
There are two separate
this is why you shouldn't argue with fucking legalists about the law.
Stop. No, don't. You can't give them the credit for this, man, because you can use a freedom of religion.
You're fucking helping, Jebton. I'm sorry.
No, you can use freedom of religion in cases where you're not doing a general free speech argument.
Jebton, I'm trying to help you out and give you an
I know, I
argument
don't need
this. So schools most of the time have moral clauses in their contracts with teachers to where if you break morals, then they are allowed to fire you. These do exist in teacher contracts more often than not.
Wait, but the district said you have to exhibit sportsmanlike conduct at all times. If you are a coach, you have to be a mentor and role model for student athletes. You have to maintain positive media relations, always approach with composure. Those sound like explicit parts of your duty that go beyond just I don't know, shotgun play.
I'm telling you, a Nazi salute would break the moral clause of a teacher contract.
Why? Why?
Why?
Because of what it stands for. So same reason of having a
same logic.
Because we have established precedent that religion is different than general.
Wait. Calm down.
Wait.
So let me go over to Sprouticus, right? So I gotta ask you.
Wait. Hello.
Why?
Hello. Is it
Nazism?
Wait. Okay. Is it? Can you guys turn me up in Discord because I've put my mic on?
I'm turning you up.
I'd
yes, I'm
appreciate
turning
that.
you up.
It's very difficult.
You're louder than he is. He's just talking over you.
Oh, I had you at 90%. That's my bad. That is my fault. I'm sorry. I have you at 150 now. I can hear you clear.
Okay, so I want to give people an order. Who wants to talk? I'm just going to give people an order. Nobody interrupting anybody. Okay?
So I'd like to get down to Sprouticus here and just ask him.
I'm going to give an order.
Pivotal,
okay. So it's
this is a pivotal question,
let me give. Okay, it's pivotal. I understand that the world is in the balance. Let me just give an order. Okay, I want to write down names. So it's gonna go Andrew, then Sprouticus. We're gonna respond. Then we're gonna go Kevin, then Jeb in that order. Okay.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, Sprouticus, one more time. I gotta ask you. This is the crux of this guy's argument. He's asking you why, and any moral claim you make is going to be subjective. So this is the whole problem. You're engaging in legalism with this guy, and he's a fucking lawyer, right? This is, or at least he says he is, and we'll just grant that he is. But what I'm asking you is why? Why would that be, from your subjective standpoint, immoral? This is his entire claim, and I don't think you have anything for that, do you?
I do, and you wouldn't let me speak.
Now I'm going to let you speak.
Awesome. A Nazi salute is not part of a religion. I agree that this is a freedom of religion case. And the schools oftentimes have moral clauses in their contracts with teachers in which religion cannot be included.
So it was satanic.
So with this being said,
What if it was satanic and that's a recognized religion by the United States? Would that be okay?
That was the next question.
Albeit, it's religious freedom.
So, but the thing is that it's still, if you're looking at it from a moral or ethical standpoint, that should still be just as unethical to you as the Nazi salute. Why don't you fucking guys get this? Why don't you understand what he's saying?
You don't think that schools should ban? You don't think schools should be able to ban satanic prayers in the middle of their field? No, you don't. So we're going to have courts now. So you guys who are afraid of political courts, we're going to have courts go into the sincerity of religion and be doing ecclesiastical tests to find out which are the real religions and which are the fake religions that are more political. Is that really what you want?
No, he's literally saying not to do that. He's specifically saying not to do that.
Oh, wait, but I heard you say that you would allow satanic prayer in the half field.
Yes, he said he's not putting it up to an ecclesiastical test to see if it's sincere or not. He's saying
So if I said I have a Nazi religion, so suppose I said Nazi religion, you can't test the sincerity.
I mean, what's the standard now?
You just said you wouldn't have a.
What is the standard now for religion?
Who cares what the standard is?
You just said.
I do. Stop telling me what my questions are.
No, I'm asking you. Who cares what the standard is right this second? If we're looking at it from a but if we're looking at it from a hypothetical, let's say it was the standard.
Let him answer.
So you just told me, so Sprouticus, you just and also Jeb said that there was not going to be a sincerity test on the religion. So someone says it's my Nazi religion that I go out there and do the Nazi salute. It's my religion. I believe.
I tell you what. I base my standard on what the Supreme Court has ruled for in freedom of religion cases, and Satanism has won freedom of religion cases in courts before there is precedent for Satanism winning freedom of religion cases. And so with that,
you
being
will
said,
test sincerity. You're gonna test sincerity, right?
There's obviously some standard for sincerity, as you're not going to get away with murder because it's quote unquote part of your religion.
Use pre-existing standards as they exist.
Look, Andrew's sincere religious belief is Nazism. So why are you oppressing him by not allowing him to do the Nazi salute?
I'm sorry. Did you just level an allegation at me? I think for certain that your religious belief is pedophilia, sir.
Yeah,
and I think so because you clearly have a pedophilic flag behind you right this second, right?
Let's not do any sincerity testing on any of those points.
Yeah, so great. So don't.
I don't want to see how sincere he is or isn't.
So before you get into Nazism and blah blah blah, which is all bullshit and nonsense, and you just trying to throw shade because you have no arguments. At this point,
no, I'm just mocking you.
I'm actually agreeing with your side because I'm saying that this is an all or nothing, winner takes all type scenario. And so what happens is the right wing.
But it doesn't fucking have to be. If you thought about this for more than 13 seconds and you had more than 3 neurons in between your ears, you would be able to understand that it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, and we can reach a level of productive compromise, and society could move along with all of us being slightly less than perfectly happy, but still more happy than we currently are. But no, you're an idiot.
Tends to decide that, well, we'll fracture this, and we'll say some of it's okay, some of it's not okay, and that enter the lawyer, he comes in, he picks it to fucking pieces, as well they should, because it's not consistent. So just be fucking consistent. That's all I'm asking for. Just be consistent with what it is that you think.
Okay, next is going to be Jeb, and then it's going to be Ginger.
Man, this has gone so many places, but I was told there was an argument given for me that was going to strengthen my argument, and I think it honestly got us more and more in the weeds. Again, fundamentally, we have the right to freedom of religion. That is something that persists through everything. Like you said, the moral code.
A normal U.S. citizen has the right to freedom of religion, correct. Continue.
Cannot have religion implied in them. You can't imply that some sort of religious conduct is against the moral code if it is specifically enumerated in someone's religion. You can't have a ban against praying on a mat in your moral code because someone is Muslim and you don't want them to pray a Muslim prayer. When I tried to ask a question when everybody jumped in on me. Is the protection of your right to religion separate from your protection of your right to free speech? And I know the answer. I don't need anyone to answer it. The answer is yes. It 100% is. And it extends much farther. I agree with the right to religion.
Disagree. While it is separate, it does not pertain further. It can be restricted in fundamentally similar ways, right? Of course it can. We don't allow, pastors. Literally, the Johnson Amendment, or Act, Johnson Act? Anyways, literally states that you lose your 501c3 if you operate as a religious organization that then partakes in politics. While that is not very well enforced and is under threat constantly and may even already be overturned, I'm not entirely certain at this moment, doesn't much matter. We have clear distinctions between what is religious and speech, and those break down at certain points when other people's lives come into effect. The government fundamentally is there to protect the minority, and the minority can literally be any individual person based on a set of circumstances. It sure as shit seems like we've gotten away from that point, doesn't it?
Aspect of this case. I don't necessarily care about the right to free speech because, again, while it may be sufficient, it isn't necessary. You could be without the right to free speech argument. You would still have the right to religious argument, and it would be sufficient for this case. Still, because he had the right to religion in that circumstance. He was not instructing that religion to anybody. He was freely expressing that religion around people, but it was still private speech. You are allowed to pray even on public time because circumstances can determine private speech, but so can content of the speech.
The thing is, it doesn't help you because even the right of free expression of religion is not unlimited. If there's, first of all, if there's neutral laws of general applicability, right? Let's say that your religion says that you can have human sacrifice. Those are actual religions. They're human sacrifice. The government's allowed to regulate that stuff, even though it would like technically infringe on your freedom of expression of religion. And even in the case of beliefs as such and displays as such, you can imagine religious prayers, speeches that are so disruptive that they just shut down the function of our societies. Or schools have like let's say that you actually believe, Andrew, and you think that scientism is a religion, or that you think that and people recognize it as a religion, or people think that gender theory is a religion. Let's say that you accept that.
It's coming.
And then they said that's my religious expression. Now that stuff and teaching that stuff and having discourse on that stuff that you hate would be protected under the religion clauses. Like that can't be allowed. Like you're
right. So the standard you said is it's so disruptive, it's going to break everything apart, and it's going to result in material coercion among students, and it didn't. There was no evidence of unequal treatment toward the students that did participate in the prayer.
The test isn't,
it didn't interrupt anything.
The test isn't it didn't. In fact, if that was the test, then like you could just have people who by virtue of circumstance are all Christian, and so that your prayer didn't really move the ball on them because they were all going to pray anyway, but it would still violate.
You have to show harm. The students would have to show harm in that particular case.
Prayer on public time in non-instructional circumstances has been upheld as something that is okay.
Prayer banners in gymnasiums have not been upheld.
Okay. He didn't put up a prayer banner in gymnasium. He prayed alone.
He didn't.
He amended his conduct so much to the
really
point
like
that
he's missing
he
the
was just
point,
simply
right?
praying at the half line on his half point, at the middle of the field.
Do you agree with his
with
lawyers?
No one around.
Do you agree with his lawyers that his previous conduct would violate the First Amendment? Because that's what they said. They agreed that his previous conduct would violate the First Amendment.
I don't care.
But he modified his conduct and they didn't fire him for his prior conduct.
You agree? You agree
fired
that his
him.
previous conduct, right? His big group prayers, all his locker room prayers.
No, I don't care.
So you
he wasn't fired for that.
You
But
disagree
it doesn't
with
matter. Tell me why his end conduct he got fired for was against the First Amendment, because that is what would be necessary for your argument for this to be
as Andrew said,
fire him.
they suspended him. They fired.
They fired.
May
No,
I?
he got fired.
No. He's about to answer something. Hold on. Tell me where.
I will give you my affirmative answer, but I just want to be clear.
Okay. Yes.
Your answer needs to be consistent throughout your argument, and if not, I'm just going to show you its inconsistencies. And that's why I want to establish beforehand if you agree with his own lawyers that his previous conduct violates the Establishment Clause. And if you don't agree with that, then I'm gonna give you an even more stark example. So before I get on this,
I don't, and this is why. Why my stated opinion on this is going to be that it is irrelevant because he was not suspended for that conduct.
I can't ask you hypotheticals. I can't ask you hypotheticals.
Yes, that's my point. I'm trying to get you to prove why him being suspended for the conduct. That's what he was suspended for. That's what the case is pertaining to. Tell me why that conduct.
The court is not just making.
That's what the ruling was based on.
You can't have it both ways, Pisco. He wasn't terminated for the prior conduct.
Yes,
you're not even answering the question. You're not even answering the question whether or not.
Because I'm telling you to answer my question finally.
I will, but will you answer mine?
No, because I don't think it's relevant.
Wait, so you'll never answer hypos in this conversation about the law?
No, I'll answer some, but relevant ones. They're not relevant because that's not what he was terminated.
Isn't it convenient that he can just pick and choose what is or is not relevant so that he can answer or not answer in the way that best fits him? Weaselly little shit.
Answer him too, Pisco.
May
okay, I'll give you your answer, and then everyone's gonna see that you're being a little I don't know, weasel.
I'm not. I'm not being a weasel. I'm telling you to keep it on what the case was about, which was his conduct at the end and his suspension for it.
So you're not going to answer in hypo whether or not his previous conduct would violate this Establishment
Clause. I will after we establish whether or not they were right to suspend him, which is what the case was brought to the Supreme Court for.
I'll tell you why. First of all, none of this speech is protected. Number one, because it's obviously government speech. this is within the scope of his employment. His explicit contract talks about how he has to be a positive role model for the kids. He was on the clock. He was having duties to take care of the field, to make sure all the kids were getting off the field. The previous 8 years of his prayers informed his current conduct, where he was doing all the things that his own lawyers concede what would be in his official duties. And so because it's public speech, it's clear that both Pickering analysis, which is the free speech analysis, and the relevant free expression analysis doesn't apply. But even if it were private speech, I would say there's a legitimate interest in the role of the state to prevent an establishment clause violation. And this would be an establishment clause violation. It is coercive of students.
But again, there was no evidence of coercion.
Actual coercion.
Now
Oh, for fuck's sake, just think 4 steps ahead of where you're currently at. If there wasn't coercion in this particular point, does that matter? Because if it had happened in a different place, it would have been coercive. You can't have your cake and then eat it too. The eating it too doesn't allow you to have your cake.
You actually, no, well, hang on. First of all, that fact record is highly disputed. Yes. And you can say, like, I just read the majority and I accept all their facts as they take them. That's like, okay, that's fine. They disagree. I disagree. That's what we're here for, to disagree on the relevance, the significance of the fact. That's what being a lawyer and interpreting law, and that's all about. It's about disagreeing, okay, and distinguishing. And so I disagree with their established facts. By the way, a lot of people do too. I agree more with the dissent's theory. Now that I've answered your question on 2 separate independent grounds why I think they're totally free to sanction them. 1, because it's public speech, so it's not protected. And 2nd, because I think even if it is private speech, we have to prevent establishment clause violations. That's a significant interest of the state. And so the Pickering analysis there, it fails for Mr. Kennedy. Now will you answer whether you agree with Mr. Kennedy's lawyers that his previous conduct would violate the establishment clause?
It depends at what point you're talking about. I think it was to the.
It doesn't matter.
I
just
forgot
say
exactly
yes or
what
no.
The timeline was of the beginning of his remedy, but there was a point at which he was simply going to the middle of the field to pray. There was an understanding that's what he was going to do, but he wasn't calling students to come join him, but students were still coming to join him. I think that would be a violation of his First Amendment right to freedom of religion to fire him for that. I agree that the promotion.
Lawyers disagree with them. The lawyers say all that the locker room speeches and the religious prayers directly to the students. The coach agrees that the lawyers agree. Establishment clause violations under well-settled precedent. Do you agree with that determination by Mr. Kennedy's own lawyers?
I disagree with the second, the prayers to students. I disagree with that. I don't disagree with the locker room structure, because that is the point at which the students, they have to be in that locker room. They have to be listening to him. And he was choosing to speak on that time. That is public speech.
A public paid coach, they're allowed to lead a prayer for students, but a public teacher is not allowed to lead a prayer for students. Am I getting that right?
No, because public teachers are allowed to lead prayers for students in certain circumstances, even on.
No, they're not. In the context when they're coaching, right? So he's coaching and he's saying, "We just won the game. I just want to take this time right now for us to pray and thank God for our victory today." Imagine a similar case in the classroom. In the classroom, you agree that would be banned, but now in the coaching context, banned or not banned?
No, I don't agree, because again, at the point at which the game.
Thank you for getting us through this test. We would like to come here to thank Allah for his magnificent guidance. I am sorry that all the females didn't get. They didn't pass. Only the white males, or only the males did. Sorry, I forgot we were talking Christianity for a second.
Game is over, that is the point at which class is over in the parallel in my mind. So if class is over, and I said if someone lays out their mat to pray and another student gets next to them and lays out their mat to pray too, that would be a violation of their religious liberties to fire
them. Classroom ends, teacher says, everyone gather around, let's all have a prayer.
I specifically said that the point at which he was going to pray and kids were choosing to go pray with him, I believe it would be a violation of his religious liberty.
What would be coercive? I mean, the whole point of coercive is to not explicit forcing. The whole doctrine of coerciveness is getting that not explicit forcing. And so if leading the class in a prayer, even when I'm saying you don't technically have to join, isn't coercive, then nothing is coercive. What would be coercive?
No, that's not true. That's not true.
So you're saying right now
that Pisco, what was the actual coercion?
In this particular case?
Offering an opportunity with the specific condition that they know that they don't have to join, and he explicitly says that they don't have to join is not coercion.
We're talking about the fact pattern before the
no, we're actually we're discussing this case. You keep wanting to go back. You want to go into prior. No, you want to keep going back to the prior conduct
because I care about like logic and reasoning.
I get what you're trying to do, right? But this case shows no evidence that there was anything that was coercive.
Really?
In the beginning, there was. That
it was not argued in this particular case.
That was not
the fact that it existed under prior.
That was not the complaint that was filed to the court. The complaint that was filed to the court was not underneath those pretexts by either party.
Mm-hmm. So if all the kids said that this was coercive, if the kids had all been like,
always considers the case before it.
If the kids had all like gone to the court and during like factual development for summary judgment had all said we all felt coerced, would you be like, okay, it was coercive?
If there was a finding by the court that it was coercive, sure.
So it's subjective coerciveness, not objective test. It's a subjective test. Were they in fact coerced? Not was the action dangerous?
You have to show actual harm. I can't just go in and say Pisco coerced me to change my argument. There has to be some evidence that there was actual coercion applied.
It's crazy how
if you don't come pray with me on the 50-yard line, I'm going to bench you next game.
It's crazy how wrong
there was no objective coercion. That's reported in this case that the Supreme Court.
Usually, you do have to prove damages, right? Usually, you do have to prove.
No, you have to prove harm, and then you lead to damages.
Come on, are you really trying? Stop, okay? Harm, damages. You're not going to be a stickler. You're going to get mad at me for like getting you for the Google thing. Do not get mad at, or I don't know if you got mad at that.
No, look, okay. If you're saying harm, if you're saying damage means harm, fine. I got no problem.
Okay. Usually you have to prove damages or some kind of like thing that's going to happen to you. But establishment clause cases, like one of the few breeds of cases where you don't actually have to show a burden of harm. That's like one of the cases in which it's unique that you don't have to show that harm.
I can say I've been coerced, but not actually have to show that I was coerced.
It's coercive.
It's coercive only if you feel coerced.
So you're saying it is a subjective test. So if there were, you're okay with prayer.
I think he's arguing it's fundamental. I think he's arguing that the idea of coercion itself is fundamentally subjective. I think is his argument.
No, but it's an objective. It should be an objective test, shouldn't it?
I think that's what he's arguing is that coercion might be a bad test.
Wait, should it be an objective test?
It should, right?
Oh, okay.
Well, then how can you have an objective test?
An objective test?
Yeah. If I am not actually harmed, meaning for me to feel coerced about not being able to play if I don't pray, okay, then I literally have to be benched and no other reason exists for me to bullshit. Hang on, let me finish. Okay, if I'm going to say I feel like I was coerced, if I didn't go out there and pray, I felt like I was going to be forced to sit down. That's asking somebody to disprove a negative.
So first of all, three people I think said that they were, and so I don't know,
in this case.
Yeah, that's crazy. There's like how many people on a football team?
Okay, so now it's not just one person. So before you was like, show me.
If one person decides that they're coerced in one situation where the vast majority don't, I don't think that meets the.
You said this needs to be objective, right?
Yes.
When you say an objective test in the law, what you're saying is it doesn't depend on the subjective actual coerciveness. You take this is the reasonable person test, right? When you're analyzing tort law, what's a reasonable person going to do with this?
Okay.
And so that's the objectiveness about it. And so usually we want like all of our schools to have the same establishment clause standard. If you're like, oh, it might be different depending on how many. You want the religion clauses to be totally random based on your.
Oh, well, if you're talking about public schools, then I agree.
Yeah. We're only talking about public schools, asshole. This is a establishment clause.
I'm just clarifying. You said all of our schools. I was like, I don't think anybody wants all of our schools to be held.
Okay, my bad. I should have public schools.
Why don't we put a hypothetical out here, because you did differentiate if one person objects. So let's say everybody on the team was Christian, and one student was Muslim, and they felt coerced to join in because they were not part of that religion. However, they felt, oh, well, this might actually affect my playtime. I'll feel like I'm isolated from the rest of the team. People might haze me. I don't feel the coach is supporting me anymore. Those are things that one student, it would be very relevant to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be relevant, but I think that you still couldn't make a decision on whether it was coercive until you address the content of the speech, which if the content of the speech shows an active attempt to ensure the lack of coercion, aka specifically stating you do not have to participate, there will be no punishment for not participating.
Can I give an example?
No, hold on. It doesn't have to be intentionally coercive, but if you show an intentional effort to be non-coercive, I think that can aid in your argument against coercion.
I think I think it's pretty obvious where I stand on this. Again, you should work to remove harm from as many people as possible. And again, you need the veil of ignorance.
Card. So just say, hey guys, not coercive, wink, and then you can do whatever you want.
Okay, well,
no, you can't do whatever. No, stop. He's asking me a question. This is perfect. That's where we have to incorporate whether there was evidence that even though they were saying there was no coercion, that there was still a punishment possibly levied against the students. So was there a difference in playtime from the kids who would? But no, you can't just say, oh, because he said this is not coercion and I think he's lying, it's coercion. No, that's where you would definitely have to show, okay, well, he gave this isn't coercion winky face, but it's pretty clear that the kids weren't getting the playing time. Like,
that's
I don't think
so this is a subjective test.
What I'm saying is the one student standard should not be the standard just blanket carried out in every circumstance. I think that's ridiculous on its face.
I agree. No, I agree. It should be an objective standard. It should be to like the reasonable student. But you want to say like
yes, and I think no, I agree because I think I agree. I think the reasonable student that is told explicitly there will be no punishment and has seen no punishment levied on other students would agree, and that is why the majority of the football team did not testify that they were coerced, and only 3 did, because I think the reasonable student would not believe it was coercive, and that is how it panned out.
I totally disagree.
Are they all named Colin Kaepernick?
You think if 3 people of a group of at least 22 students, you think 3 people out of that big group is evidence that the reasonable person would definitely be coerced and not necessarily
that's
that maybe a more unreasonable person would be coerced?
So the fact that you have students who
don't raise your hands, Proudicus. Just cut in like a man. You know, just cut in like a man. Don't raise your hand.
I think he's respecting the good back and forth. I think
the fact that you have students who may already be that religion, the fact that they might say like, yeah, it's not coercive because I am Christian, just like Slash said, right? It's not coercive for me. I'm already this religion. I already want to pray. I already do pray. So our denominator can't be people who are like agree with you. The denominator has to be, is it coercive for people who are not of that religion? Shouldn't it?
I mean, yeah, but that's not bona fide the case here. That wasn't found.
Don't we need no more facts?
That's what I'm saying is incorporate more facts. But then you said that's become subjective, and if we incorporate that many, we're making it subjective. I think the objective standard should be that if you show an insistent effort to make it non-coercive by specifically stating that there.
Like if I needed to get into orbit, I would point Jeb at the ground. That's how bad he's missing the point.
Will be no consequences, and following that up by treating all of the students fairly, that objectively you have shown that you are not being coercive because you went out of your way to make sure they knew that they didn't need to do it, and you went out of your way to treat them all fairly.
I have something to say in regards to this. I feel like the example that he's leading by kind of, and I'm sure I'm gonna get shit for this, but by peacocking his religion, when he can so easily do it quietly and to himself without causing a scene, is coercive in itself because the Bible.
You say the same thing about homosexuality. I'm just curious,
Bible,
like if you peacock,
wait, Andrew, you gotta let him finish first.
All right. So
why do I need to let her finish? Because why isn't it pertinent for me to cut in at the?
There we go. So much nicer.
Okay, thank you. So the Bible teaches Christians to announce their faith, to lead by example, and in that you are trying to deter people from their original thought to the thought of yours. That's pretty much what the Bible it teaches is so that that's the way that we teach our word and we live by example. So instead of this guy going home to pray, to bend the knee and pray or whatever, or going into his office or whatever to do this, which he could have done.
Was that in Psalms just made that shit up on the spot? Or where can you reference that that's what the Bible teaches, Ginger?
That the Bible teaches you that you should lead by example.
Don't save her. Everybody always wants to save the chick. Just let her fucking answer.
You won't let me answer. How are they supposed to let me answer?
I'm letting you answer. He cut in on me.
I'm actually gonna just not answer him.
Of course you're not, because you don't know the answer, right?
No, I do.
Say that?
I do.
Well, then say it.
I've got a response to the concern.
Would you let Ginger answer my question? We let you guys go on a back and forth for.
She said she's not gonna though.
Okay, I'm ask Pisco my question. So
she said she's not. She said she's not going to. So I just want to respond to the concern.
Let me inquire with her like you were just doing with Pisco. Can you tell me? Can you tell me, Ginger, from your perspective, where the Bible says these things?
To lead by example.
Yeah, anything that to substantiate any of the things that you just said. Can you tell me biblically where any of those things are substantiated?
It says it throughout the Bible, actually.
Where?
Paul's writings.
These guys, everybody always jumps the fuck in.
There's Corinthians, there's Timothy, there's Matthew, there's Luke and John.
Yeah, I'm not asking you about all the books in the Bible. I'm asking you specifically. Can you substantiate the books in the Bible, your claims?
They're the things that I brought up.
Yeah, where though?
I can give you a direct caller.
Who cares? She was responding to me, so I want to respond to the concern, which is that if we hold Christianity to a different standard based on its evangelism, we're sort of fundamentally treating it differently than any other religion, just due to the nature of.
Yeah, you would if you had a religion that was like, if you had a religion about child sacrifice, you treat it differently. You treat different things differently.
But that's not. But again, in this context, we're not talking about sacrificing children. We're talking about the possible implied intent.
And you guys are crazy people who would let Satanists pray in the middle of your field, and you wouldn't distinguish based on religions. I guess I'm not.
Well, I mean, obviously it depends on what they do, but no, if they're just taking a knee and saying, "Dear Satan, please help us win the next game and defeat everybody and give us a good life," no, I don't think you should be able to fire them for that. But
what do you think about that, Andrew? What do you think about that Christian theology?
If they're saying sail Hayton, murder everybody, kill all the kids, we're going to go gut a lamb later, then yeah, I would say maybe a little bit because of the potential harm of gutting a lamb in front of everybody. Yeah.
So Pisco, I've got a question for you, Pisco. So from my understanding, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, the coach that we're referring to was an assistant coach, and he was not the head coach, and he wasn't in charge of time. Are any of those statements incorrect?
I don't think those statements are incorrect. I don't think he was a head coach. I think you're right on the facts.
So with that being said, because I've wanted to say this for a while, but it's just been so much. But with that being said, I'm not really sure why we're debating. Like I've heard people debate this like coercively, saying that time was a factor when this coach didn't even have control of the time. He wasn't the head coach; he was an assistant coach. And so
no, I mean company time. Like he was on the job.
No. They're talking about playing time. So I forget.
No, I'm not. No. The prayers for the purposes of the litigation. What's his name? Jeb Tan is correct that the purpose of litigation, the majority assumed that you're not talking about the previous stuff. You're talking about the current stuff, and that stuff was all after the game was over, after the game was done. And so that's the kind of facts that I'm going off of. And your question is such a good one because it gets the heart. Oh my God, my law degree just fucking slammed. Okay, Andrew, you fucker.
I did this to you. Remember this, and remember the fact that you're slouching down. You're slouching down right now in defeat, right? Okay. Sit the fuck up.
So your question is a really good one. It's a really good one because I would have a different standard for like the janitor. If the janitor wants to have like a private prayer, I'm not going to do the same analysis where I'm like, he has an instructional role, that he's media facing. It's just a different nature of position. Just like there's ministerial exceptions for the for like civil rights laws and employment laws. So there are ministerial exceptions. If you're a minister in this country, you can discriminate on the basis of sex, right? If you're a Catholic priest, you can say that women aren't allowed. That's a ministerial exception to the free that's sort of found in the free exercise clause. And so based on your role, the Supreme Court has decided that different rules apply. And that makes sense because we don't necessarily want the church going in and deciding who's a pastor. Imagine if the church was like, you have to allow women and gays into your like Catholic priesthood.
You just said that we shouldn't allow the church to decide who are pastors.
No, what I'm saying is the court has recognized that it would seem weird if the federal government were to say something like, the Catholic Church must allow gay people and women to be priests.
Okay, Pisco, you said something there that I just want to touch on. You said something I just want to touch on. You said a janitor. You said if a janitor were doing it, you wouldn't have a problem with it as compared to a coach because of the difference in their roles. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would change the scope of their duties, right?
Doesn't that create a disproportionate or unequal application of the law?
No,
that's not a 14th Amendment.
It changes the scope. It changes the scope. It's not an equal protection issue. And I heard that a little bit too. The separate but equal stuff, that is not at issue here. Okay, just excise that from your brain. Doesn't apply.
No, I was talking about KF Logan bringing up that they gave him like a little private prayer room and he chose not to use it. That was the reason I
that would make sense. Given Kevin's statement makes complete sense if you're analyzing the scope of what is in their duties, right? I think a lot of people would feel bad about banning like a janitor from wearing a crucifix or something like that, right? We don't think of them wearing that symbol like underneath their shirt while they don't have a public facing role. They don't, but we feel a little better.
I don't think they were trying to make a reasonable accommodation to allow him to have his religious practice, but also not break the law. Like they were just trying to be reasonable.
I don't think you should be able to ban anyone disregarding the role of wearing a crucifix.
Job.
Okay, maybe you think a crucifix is like
no, you can't do that.
You cannot
ban the free exercise.
Their job. What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
No, it has total implications. Like if you take a public job, it totally matters how you comport. You're taking that employment on conditions. You can't just be, giving out. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, and assuming you have a government job or something, you can't hand out your flyers on the job. You can't.
The example was the wearing of a crucifix.
The expression of one's religion, such as wearing a crucifix, cannot be used as
but hang on. I want this logically explained. Can you logically explain to me how somebody would be barred from doing their job or would do their job poorly because they're wearing a crucifix?
Let's say that are you asking me or are you asking, I don't know.
I'm asking you.
I can't think of a lot of situations in which a crucifix would
they have
be
tattooed on them.
It would be in the scope.
Could they have it tattooed on them, Pisco?
Let him finish, because I think he was about to say he can't think of a lot of times.
It's fine. It's good. Let us have some back and forth. Relax.
Okay.
Go ahead.
In terms of like a cross, I can think of certain religious displays that would be so difficult to coincide with how you run your workplace. Let's say that you were wearing, some religious display, like a Satanist garb, or let's say that you are a Pastafarian and you're wearing like a, I don't know, what are those called? The trainers, right? Trainers.
Yes.
Back to the crucifix before you go off on a diatribe. Just the crucifix.
I'm about to distinguish those cases where I can think of some religious displays which are so weird that people wouldn't go to your
we're not talking about those.
Office. The crucifix, I think, has been sort of accepted and wouldn't I can't think of situations. Maybe they would. Maybe if like a judge was wearing it and they're supposed to be equal before the law, I would have a problem with it.
What if the judge had a tattoo of a crucifix?
I think it would be a problem, right? Let's say like if your job is to be a judge and to be impartial, and that's why you wear black robes. I can think of having any kind of religious display, including hijab, where that could be problematic.
But okay, so back to
line drawing. There's a line drawing problem here, Andrew. I'm not going to lie to you. There are some cases which are hard cases, and some cases which are easier cases. And
right. So we're back to subjectivity again, right?
But what are you going to say, Andrew? All religious displays are allowed? Or are you going to say that Satanists are allowed to wear their stuff?
Well, no. But again, if we're going to be consistent, hang on. If we're going to be consistent, right? We would have to say that, though, right?
No, not if you have a rule of like disruption and you have some now at some level of analyzing what's a disruption.
Even if you had the rule of disruption, everything would have to fall into it, or nothing would, right?
That's what we have like courts and judges for, and reasonability.
This is my whole point: is that all of this
is based on reasonability.
Pisco, calm down. Let me just explain. the entirety of this conversation has been very surface level, revolving around a singular case. It's not really getting to the heart of the issue. And the heart of the issue is whether or not we're able to have an all or nothing situation in these particular instances. Right. Well, from your perspective, you say no, right? And this creates conflict.
But you wouldn't either. You and I agree.
I don't know. I don't think I only agreed with you on the consistency or the lack of consistency of your opponent's argument. You didn't agree with your prescriptions.
Let me ask you your rule. You would let Satanists and Nazis and any kind of religious display, or even free speech display for that matter,
be completely consistent, and I would only allow Christian symbolism, period.
What kind of Christian symbolism?
Oh, well, I would not Roman. One more time. I'm not a fucking Catholic. How many times I got to say this? Not a Catholic. I'm an Orthodox Christian.
Some religious displays you would consider to be like heresy, right? And it wouldn't.
Yeah,
like those.
So, well, absolutely. And I think that those are detrimental to the public as well.
Right? That's kind of subjective for you.
Who decides it now, right?
No. You still have a.
You know what I mean? Now, hang on, Pisco, relax, calm down. Let me get a word in. I'll let you get a word in too. What I'm saying to you is that just because you're consistent with the application, now you make the argument, well, who allows it? Well, who allows it now? Whoever's in a control grid for power is who allows or disallows these things. But for the best possible outcome from all you likely utilitarians on the panel, having a singular religion is probably the best for everybody, isn't it?
So you would apply, I don't agree with that. You would apply a different rule, but the rule would be subjective in the same way, a rule about
it would be
disruption.
objective. You can objectively apply it. Why couldn't you? Why couldn't you?
Because there are going to be edge cases on the heresy front as well.
It's the edge case.
I do want to say you could have an objective standard that would apply specific facts to a given scenario. The issue is you can't have like a objective standard that is solely one answer always, or else it's not a standard anymore. It is an application of a direct.
But what would that be? What would that actually be, Franklin?
It's called an edict.
If you said something like no profane religious displays or something, or some rule like that,
you'd have to look
someone
at general
is deciding what's
circumstances,
profane, right?
Yeah, but someone is deciding everything right now.
Yes,
So, I mean, what's your point? That doesn't mean anything. Just saying somebody decides these things doesn't mean anything to me.
You almost got it. You almost got it. The point is,
you objective standard, you almost got it. You don't got it. One more time, I'm going to ask you, why don't you have an objective standard just because somebody else is making the rules? It makes no sense.
You almost have it. So standards need to be applied.
Question.
I'm answering it. Standards need to be applied to circumstances, and your standard might be. No, standards don't need to be applied to circumstances.
I said so.
So if you're applying a standard like no overly disruptive religious displays, what the hell is that?
That's vagary. Right? What you're doing is you're intentionally being vague when I'm asking you for objectivity.
I'm purposely making
bullshit artistry, right? You're like, if you were to give a vagary, then I would have a vague answer. Well, I'm not asking about vagary. I'm asking about specific objective standards. And you're saying we can't have them, and I need you to explain to me why the fuck you can't have them without using vagary.
You're not letting me finish my statement, and it's going to be hard for you to understand it if you don't let me finish it.
Okay, I'll let you finish.
All right,
you're
buddy.
going to give me nothing but vagary, I guarantee it. But go ahead.
I'm purposely giving, just like the originalist where I was questioning him about the dictionaries, you just don't understand what's going on. So maybe just shut up and wait for me to explain it.
I understand.
So I'm purposely giving you a secular vague standard that you're going to hate. That was the point of me saying any sort of...
Why? That's not the point of what we're contesting. It makes no sense.
Let me finish, please.
What purpose? Answer my fucking question. I don't need to let you finish on things that have nothing to do with what we're talking about.
It has everything to do with it.
Run the fucking time clock.
Answer it right, or I'm going to interrupt you. So just like you can have secular, very vague standards, you can have a very precise secular standards, No.
Yes, you can. Thank you.
No.
I agree.
But those are, no garments above 5 inches.
Absolutely, I agree.
No crosses. No, nothing worn around the neck.
That's the one. You can say stuff about dress, but you can't.
At this point,
you cannot.
At the end
cannot preclude religious artifacts.
We can have.
You can preclude religious artifacts in specific.
Standards.
Wait, you can, and I agree with BPF on this. You can have objective standards in particular situations, the circumstances. So, for example, you can ban a niqab when someone's testifying. That is a circumstance where it is relevant what the religious practice is for a very good reason. And you are applying that subjectively as the judge, but it is on an objective standard, because what you would do is you'd go, well, I guess what is objectively occurring here? We're looking at religious experience, like content during a specific, like based on a specific circumstance.
Yeah, a standard is something you apply, right? You elaborate the standard based on, you hate this word, Andrew, precedent. Right? You have cases before. You didn't think that this was going to come up.
Did you say I hate the word precedent? When did I express that?
You were mocking people who were citing precedent before.
Well, no. What I said was that this is common for lawyers to do. Was to cite precedent.
Wow,
yeah.
I mean, that's a great observation, guys. For
wait, but how does that equal me hating it?
You were doing it in a mocking tone. Were you doing it in a mocking tone?
How does it equal me hating it? Can you answer my question?
When you do a mocking tone, would you say
answer my question?
Writing something, or is it neutral?
How does it equal me hating it? Even if I mocked it incessantly, why would that mean that I hated it?
I assumed. Maybe I was wrong.
Right. So don't make assumptions. Just go off what I say. Very simple.
What did you want me to say? If I said mocking, you would
so one more time, I didn't say anything about hating anything, hating precedent, hating any of these things. Don't build straw mans. Just argue against what I'm asking you, which is
precedent is valuable. Whether or not you think you have the perfect,
can't we have objective standards?
Whether or not you think you have the perfect objective religious test that's going to apply to every religious display and it's going to apply to every religious circumstance you can think of, there's going to be something you didn't think about.
Well, then give me the example of that thing so you can demonstrate it so that then I'll understand.
Let me do the value and then I'll give you an example. Is that cool? And
sure.
Let me finish my thought and then I can give you an example. So there's going to be something that you didn't think about that, I haven't considered whether this is profane. Oh, this is new. Oh, this is whatever. Or this has never happened before. And you're going to have to apply your standard, whatever that standard is, to come to a rule decision. And that will be
about everything.
You think that that's possible? You think humans can think about every?
So yeah, there's plenty of instances where we think of everything in certain isolated circumstances. There's no doubt.
Can you give an example?
True. Oh yeah, sure. Like let's just take a leaky pipe. It always leaks. You always have a pipe ready, and it's always fixed, and it always happens that same way every single time. Whatever it is, it's regardless of what it is, it's still logically possible that you would always be able to fix some certain situations. There's no doubt that that's true.
I think it's not reasonable.
It's reasonable or not. It's still logically possible. So I'm asking you again, why can't you have an objective standard where you've thought about these things and so you can apply them?
Where you've thought about everything?
Well, you thought about everything within the confines of this thing.
What is even the scope of everything with respect to religious display?
Regardless of what that is, why couldn't it be done?
It would be so long.
It wouldn't be impossible. That would be absurd.
You would need like a supercomputer to be able to.
No, you wouldn't need a supercomputer. That's ridiculous. Well, because again, do you agree with me that
everything? Do you know what everything is?
That within the confines of one thing, that you can know everything about one thing?
No.
In our world, no.
And
logically, I would say this.
What do you base that on?
Logically, I would say like there must be a limit to everything, I guess.
Even every singular thing.
What do you think? I mean,
scope of?
I don't know. Andrew, I really don't know. I hadn't considered whether everything is defined in the subset.
The reason I make these distinctions is because I see what happens is guys like you like to live in the gray area. You like to take kind of edge cases and say, based on the fact that these bizarre things may come up as a possibility, we should set standards on all of the edge cases. And this becomes problematic for guys like me, Jeb Tan, probably guys like the bottom right of the panel, because we don't think that you're being really good faith even in the application of the law, that what you're doing instead is you're trying to push your own programming onto people by pointing out edge cases and saying that those always need to be considered within the standard, and they
Christian
really
law have an answer
hold
for
on.
all.
Really
Wait,
don't
let
need
me
to be.
jump in.
Does Christian
Let me
law
jump in,
have
because
Christian
I was
law, does
being
Christian
told-
teachings have an answer for everything? Does Christianity have an answer for everything?
No, let me jump in real quick,
Wait,
because I
is the
was
answer
just
yes or no?
Hold on.
No.
Yeah, I just said no.
Or
I
you-
said
okay,
no,
okay,
but
okay,
also let me go.
okay. We're wrapping it up with
Nothing
that.
to
Wait,
do
no,
with
no,
my
wait,
point,
stop.
though. Nothing to do with my point.
Okay, Jeb, we're gonna throw it to you. Sprout,
Yeah.
do you still want to make your point? I saw earlier you were raising your hand. Then we're gonna look at wrapping up.
I asked Pisco the question, so
Okay,
that's
Jeb,
all I wanted to do.
You'll
Yeah.
lead us in the wrap up then.
So I actually don't have a problem with what Pisco's advocating for the most part, which is just the principle of our law, which is that you should have standards so that when an edge case comes up, you're not totally in the dark. Because I agree with him that, well, maybe in some ethereal way it's possible we could have thought of everything in a case. It is practically not probable that we ever will in any case. So it's best to have standards and to rely on precedent when edge cases come up, and understand what seems to be blatantly against what we believe to be righteous and what is not. That's why the whole selective incorporation doctrine has the standard of if something is a fundamental right or not, and we have a lot of big fights over that. But that still is a standard, just because it's imperfect. That's why I think the standard in these cases, in terms of coercion, I think that as far as our objective standard for whether something is coercive or not, I think it should be considered, and it should be of primary concern, whether the person in question had a direct good faith attempt to express specific non-coercion, and that there is no proof of unequal treatment based on whatever it was they were doing, in this case, inviting people to pray. I agree that in a locker room speech setting, there is no way you don't have coercion involved, because those students have to be in that locker room at that time, listening to that coach. They are not allowed to look away. They're not allowed to not listen, or they can be reprimanded. So I agree in the locker room setting that would be against the First Amendment. I think where Pisco and I disagree is I think my standard is higher than his for coercion, and I think as long as there's a good faith attempts to express non-coercion and there's no proof of like material mistreatment of people who don't agree, that settles the standard enough for me. I understand it doesn't for Pisco, but I don't think he's being weaselly or anything, and I understand the value in like the general legal principles that he has supported.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up now. Everybody's gonna give their ending statement, and also they're gonna shout out where people can find them. Thank you for a interesting roundtable, to say the least. We're gonna start with.
Okay, well, that's that, y'all. I'm continue getting high and passing the fuck out for the night. So, chat to y'all later.